And I'm just going to come right out and say it. You may have thought this before. I've not heard too many people say it, at least not that come to church regularly. I've heard kids say it, but I have very rarely heard adults express it, and I'm pretty sure you've never heard your pastor say this, so I'm just going to come out, get the elephant right out of the room right off the bat. Church can be boring. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting on the platform just hoping they'd get to the sermon so I could help the church service out a little bit. But then I thought about it, and I thought, some people are probably sitting in the pews thinking, I just wish the preacher would get to the benediction so he could help us out a little bit. Church doesn't have to be, but far too often, for far too many people, church is boring sometimes. My senior year of college, I worked as an intern at the Fort Worth First Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's an 850-member church there on the south side of Fort Worth, and my job was predominantly to work with the youth and young adults. And I'll never forget this particular Sabbath that we went to church. Now, my family knows this story. My wife, unfortunately, had to live this story that I'm going to tell. We weren't married yet. We were dating. How we got married after this story, I'm not sure. But my parents and my brother love to laugh about it still to this day, so now I'm going to share it with you. My job was to work with youth and young people, and for this particular Sabbath, my brother and Sylvia and I were dating. We were engaged, and we were all sitting in church, and we were sitting kind of midway up here on the front side, maybe about where Jerry and Cora is sitting right over here, and we were on the inside aisle, and for the life of me, I had had finals. Maybe it was my high-carb, high-fat, serious mac and cheese diet that I was on at the cafeteria. I don't know. But for whatever reason, when I got to church, for the life of me, I could not keep my eyes open. My brother had the same problem I did. In fact, I think whoever sat on that pew instantly went out. I mean, the lights just went out and we went to sleep, all except Sylvia. Now, my wife, bless her heart, we were dating, but she was passionately concerned that I not embarrass myself. I'm the youth pastor in this church, and I need to make sure that I keep my public image in order. And so my fiance would elbow me in the ribs every so often, and I'd jolt to life and say amen or something holy like that. I couldn't keep my eyes open for the life of me. My brother couldn't keep his eyes open for the life of him. I don't think my inability to keep my eyes open was the preacher's fault. He usually had something good to say. He could be dry at times, but for the most part, he brought things to think about. And this preacher was one of those guys who would say things like, in conclusion, or let me close with this, and then he'd preach for 25 more minutes. So there we are, my brother, myself, and Sylvia. My brother was on the aisle, I was next to him, and Sylvia was third in the pew. That's important because there was my wife's elbow in the ribs to remind me that I needed to keep my eyes open and pay attention to the message. And there it was, and as I tried to focus from this most recent jolt, I was very foggy, and I could hear the preacher from up front saying something to the effect that if you were desirous to be one with each other and Jesus all over again, if that's your desire, just leave your pew and come down to meet me here at the front. Well, of course I wanted to be one with Jesus. And I am the youth pastor. I have to help the people out with this decision. And so I nudged my brother and I said, come on, let's go. And we jumped up, both of us. Now my brother, as I said, come on, let's go, he came to life at that exact moment. He'd been gone in La La Land somewhere. And he pooped his eyes open and said, here I am saying, let's go. And so before my wife could respond, my brother and I were both out into the aisle. Now, as I was stepping out of the pew and into the aisle, she bravely reached over and grabbed my coat tail and said, no, not you. So I reached up and grabbed my brother and I said, not us. He said, what? So I dove back into the pew. And I didn't move over, I just dove, and my brother dives back into the pew and sits down in my lap. And then I was glad I hadn't gone for it because he was appealing to young married couples who wanted to put their lives together as one and back with Jesus again. My brother hasn't forgiven me for that either, which is why I waited till he wasn't here to preach it. Bouts with sleep during church are common, unfortunately. And whether you want to admit it or not, from where I stand, it's a reality. Preachers, including myself, when guests speaking in another church will ask, how much time do I have? And the pastor will inevitably say, the host pastor will say, take all the time you want. And the congregation will groan and say, amen.